Good morning, everyone. Thank you for choosing to join our session on safe and sustainable by design. We will have the opportunity to meet experts in chemicals, in health, in evaluation of substances and development of methodologies. I think that will be very interesting to see how Europe is evolving for better assessing chemicals. The European Green Deal defines a clear vision and objectives to move towards a circular economy and climate neutrality and zero pollution and toxic-free environment. This is not the one or the other. It is the three objectives at the same time, which brings even more complexity and difficulties in matching the goals. To do so, the safe and sustainable design by design concept is essential. Our speakers and panelists will present the SSBD framework initiatives that contribute to ensure that chemicals and materials are designed, produced, and used in a way which doesn't harm people and the environment. Our discussion will as well highlight its benefits for identifying trade-offs and at an early stage and delivering transparency for informed decision-making, supporting more sustainable solution deployments. My first speaker is Alexandra Maliska. Alexandra is a Research Policy Officer at DG Research and Innovation. And she will give us a presentation of the European Chemical Strategy Frameworks, with the concept of safe and sustainable by design is becoming a general guidance for chemical eco-design and control of their use.
Okay. I prefer to do it from here.
But they are recording the session, so it should be actually with microphone.
Yes, is that okay? Excellent. Good morning, everyone. It's a real great pleasure to be here today and to present and open, hopefully, this interesting session for all of you, with providing a bit of an overview from the European Commission side and the work and the initiatives that we have been engaged in since the announcement of the chemical strategy for sustainability. So let me start very briefly to give you just a very general overview of the policy framework which guides our activities. How the topic of this session really links to the European Commission agenda, to our priorities, and of course for the ambitious goals of the Green Deal. Miriam already mentions the goals themselves, and indeed, if we want to achieve the climate neutrality, the zero pollution, and if we want to strive towards achieving more circular industry, more circular economy, I think we need to start acting. And indeed, this ambitious goal of the Green Deal were already translated in a number of actions and initiatives. We cannot only give an overview, a very ambitious agenda, but we really need to be more specific. We need to have specific timelines, goals, milestones to achieve. And indeed, the chemical strategy for sustainability was one of the first deliverables under the zero pollution ambition. It was announced in 2020, and very generally, what the idea, what the ambition, what the aim of the chemical strategy for sustainability is to make sure that our citizens, that our health and our environment is better protected, that we have the chemicals that we need, because they are very essential for our everyday life, but that we use them in a way that are as less harmful for us and our environment as possible. remembering, this is very important always for the Commission, not to forget the competitiveness of the European industry. So this is also very much in the heart of the strategy. And of course, you can see here, there are five main building blocks, and the activities foreseen in the chemical strategy are very diverse. There are regulatory actions, there are mandatory, voluntary actions to be implemented, but among them, there are two very relevant research and innovation activities that I would like to mention today, and on one I would like to focus. So the first one that the Chemical Strategy for Sustainability foresees is the Strategic Research Innovation Agenda to really understand and identify all the research and innovation gaps to be addressed in order to make our chemicals future-proof, to make safe and sustainable for the citizens and for the environment. And this is something that is now under a consultation with stakeholders. So by the 30th of June, anyone can contribute, can provide their comments. So you're most welcome to also provide your views. The second one is really the one that we are focusing today, so safe and sustainable by design concept. But of course, research and innovation activities and actions are not the only initiatives that are foreseen by the European Commission. And there are other very relevant EU-relevant initiatives. Just to mention a few, I wanted to say about eco-design for sustainable products, green claims, REACH, which is of course now being revised, also sustainable finance and taxonomy. So there are a lot of initiatives, but with a different scope, with the different aims, and with a different application. Our idea is not to duplicate those initiatives, but to really try to make them as complementary as possible. It's not only about the regulation that will drive the change. It's always about sticks and carrots. There needs to be some restrictions. We need to prevent our society not to use the most hazardous substances. And already in Europe, we have the most restrictive and the most advanced regulatory requirements for the chemical industry that is still being revised and tried to be improved. However, we also wanted to drive the change through the innovation. We want to support scientists, researchers with going and developing and designing chemicals and materials to be safe and sustainable. But let's come back to the concept that we will be focusing on today. So the safe and sustainable by design. So what is it? I think that it was mentioned a couple of times today in the morning. So just for clarification, what are we talking about? Very broadly, very generally, how it is phrased in the Chemical Strategy for Sustainability is an approach. It is an approach to design, develop, and use chemicals and materials while to provide their function, the service, while reducing the harm. Well, seems easy, seems something that anyone would strive for, but it's quite challenging, as you might imagine. Moreover, we are not talking about ensuring the safety at the production stage. We are not talking about being sustainable by using the resources. We are talking about the safety and sustainability along the life cycle. So really from the very early on stage to the end of the life cycle. This is really challenging, and although the concept focuses on chemicals and materials, having this mindset in our head, we need to remember that also the use in the product needs to be addressed. Depending what the chemical is used for, providing a flexibility function for the plastic material, or whether it is used for the solution for cosmetics, the exposure for it will be very different. This also needs to be addressed when thinking about ensuring the safety and sustainability. What are the expected applications from our perspective of using the safe and sustainable by design framework, and of course in a further time setting the criteria that would allow us to say and to compare that this chemical or this substances is safe and sustainable? Well, we would like to steer the innovation. So as I mentioned, this is the primary goal from our perspective, to really ensure that the resources and money are funded towards development of the safer and more sustainable solution. Of course, in a long-term perspective, we would like to support substitution as far as possible, the production and use of substances of concern, and of course, as mentioned, to minimize the impact on the health, climate, and the environment. But let's go a bit more concretely. So what do we mean by the safe and sustainable by design framework? What do we think when mentioning? Actually, we've been collaborating for over a year with colleagues from JRC who have provided excellent expertise and technical advice how this framework should be built. And the first and foremost is really the designing principle. We're talking about by design. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. There is so many good initiatives ongoing, so much money, time, resources, and brains were invested in developing green chemistry principle, green engineering, sustainable chemistry, safe by design for nanomaterials. This all inspired us. Whenever development, the design stage of a new chemical or materials take place, we highly recommend, and this is something that will be published and available, to follow the rules, to follow the design principles. But is this enough? If I adjust to the rules, am I sure that my substance, my chemical, my material is really performing in a way that is safe for the environment and for citizens? Not necessarily. And we want to have this guarantee. This is why the second component of the framework is really the safety and sustainability assessment. So we want to ensure that whoever makes this assessment follows a certain logics, follow certain steps, and in the end we get the results that can be compared. So far we have launched and funded a lot of initiative, and we want to avoid a situation that a lot of money, time is spent, and also resources, and in the end we have a product that is just slightly better, that maybe we are able to reduce the water use, but on the other hand another hotspot comes up. We want to avoid that. We want to ensure that really that we compare the two substances to chemicals to materials, and we are sure that they perform as we wish. So very briefly, how the assessment should look like. And I just wanted to alert you, this is the first draft. This is proposal that will be very shortly published by the JRC in the document. It should be in the coming weeks or days. And this is something that we will test. This is a conceptual model that a lot of intellect went through, a lot of stakeholder consultation, workshops, events that we really wanted to reach out. What is important is that we, of course, starting with the safety assessment. So in the first step, when looking on your chemical or material, you want to know if the substance does not does not present any intrinsic hazardous properties. This is very relevant for us, and here also probably a cutoff criteria will need to be developed. This will be also then jointly in the testing phase, but we don't want to have the most hazardous substances to be said that, okay, this is safe to use because it's contained, so it's safe and sustainable by design. There are challenges, of course. There are substances that needs to be dealt and looked in specific, but we want to avoid that. In the second step, we are really looking at the production and processing phase. So what we want to avoid, any harm for the workers, for the production and for the processing. So here, any hazards and risk will be assessed for the production and processing. The third step of the assessment is really on the use. This is something that I mentioned regarding the functionality and exposure, depending on what the functionality of the chemical, of the material is, the exposure for the person, for the environment is very different. That needs to be taken into account, and this is the third step. The fourth step is life cycle assessment. This is where we are coming from safety to sustainability. The LCA, so the life cycle assessment methodology, is quite well developed. Still, of course, there are some gaps to fill. Here also research innovation comes into place, but it's also something that allows us to assess the sustainability aspect of the substance and material in the life cycle. The fifth step also very relevant. Social and economic sustainability assessment. But are we there yet? This is a big question mark for us. Although we recognize the significance of these steps, we know that the methodologies to really assess the aspects of social and economic sustainability are not that well covered. And also what consists economic sustainability. We don't want to talk about the profit for individual companies that is producing a specific substance in one way or the other. We are talking about the trades-off. We are talking about job creation and securing equal rights for the citizens. So that's an important step, still needs a bit more to be more precise from our perspective. But as I mentioned, this is a conceptual approach, theoretical approach that needs to be tested. And this is why we decided to already have 3 first test cases that are already done and looked at our colleagues from the JRC. And we are more than happy to hear that are already several forerunners, industry coming forward that agree to start collaborating with JRC, to start testing whether their alternatives can perform better than already existing substances on the market. So this is being looked at. Those case studies, so plasticizers for food contact materials, surfactants for textiles, and flame retardants for ICT products, were really actually chosen by you, by stakeholders. So we also opened the consultation with ask, what do you think should be the priority to tackle, to check? And those were among the top rated by the stakeholders, and this is why they are here. Of course, this is just the beginning. This is just to test if the framework is working and if we can arrive to see whether there can be criteria at the end for this specific substance group. But of course, it's not about this 3 case studies. We know it's a long-term perspective, and we are aware that it takes years. Research and innovation, it's not happening from one day to another. It's years of investment, and we need to wait for results. And this is why we also apply a very specific approach in the Horizon Europe funding. So we don't want the projects, and there are several already, you will listen a bit more about some of the initiatives that are funded, to focus on the deliverables and on delivering what they contracted with the European Commission, but we really want them to contribute to the overall, the political goals that I already mentioned. So, of course, we can say that within the project there is always a sphere of control. You know what we can deliver, you make sure that the milestones is achieved, you make sure that methodology that you promise to deliver is provided, and so on. But we also want to the projects to think about the sphere of influence, going beyond the project. So what is the exploitation plan? How can you reach out to different actors of the value chain? And of course, the last one is the sphere of interest. This is where all the projects should work together. This is what all the initiatives should work towards one goal, and the ambitious goal of really having safer and more sustainable chemicals and materials. So what's next? First of all, to make the framework more actionable, we decided to announce the Commission recommendation of the Safe and Sustainable by Design framework later this year. So this framework very, very broadly describes, so on one hand, the principles, the design principles, and then the safety and sustainability assessment steps to be followed will be made available. There will be much more technically, specifically kind of cook recipe that you can follow the steps and say, okay, if I want to assess the safety, those are the available methods to do so. Those are the options that I can use. If something is missing, then this is the area for research innovation funding to enter. Maybe some tools are missing. Maybe some data gaps we need to fill. So this is where also we are coming in. But what we would like to do is in this recommendation to invite other people, industry, member states, to also make use of the framework, to start testing it, to start referring it in the national funding programs. So whenever you would like to fund research innovation towards safer and more sustainable materials and chemicals, we would very much encourage to use this framework. Of course, testing will be a key aspects. And we are also foreseeing a testing phase to revise the framework, to also open up for the feedback from the member states, from the stakeholders. So the Commission will develop a specific template. So whenever you use the framework, you can come back to us and say, well, this does not work. This information I cannot collect. This method is not useful for me. This will be the time when we're going to collect all this information to then revise the framework and really make it actionable. There is also another third, so the last in the series, the workshop of the Commission foreseen that will be looking at the case studies. So then the first results of the 3 case studies that I mentioned will be presented, probably with the focus on one specific to really be able to go into details. We will, of course, continue to work with our colleagues from GRC, who really are the technical experts and help us with a lot of knowledge and expertise. With that, thank you for the attention, and happy to maybe answer any quick question for clarification. But I know there will be a panel discussion, so I give it to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We will move now to the next presentation. So we see a lot of work is done at the level of European Commission and in Europe to deliver safer chemicals and safer materials, but other institutions and international and prestigious institutions are as well working on that, and I'm extremely honored to welcome Eva Leinala. Eva Leinala has a long experience in toxicology, in chemicals management, and she worked recently on some tricky substances and so on, without mentioning them. She is the principal administrator on risk reduction, good laboratory practices, and mutual acceptance data programs at OECD. She made a recent research and report, very concrete, on chemicals perspective on designing with sustainable plastics. So that's very interesting to see how, in parallel, OECD is driving an important work on how to deliver better chemicals with European Commission with the safe and sustainable by design. Welcome, Eva. Don't forget the Slido if you have some questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation to be here today and to be part of this really interesting panel and entire in-tech session that's been ongoing these couple of days. So I will present to you some work that we've been doing at the OECD, really looking at plastics and a chemicals perspective in the context of plastics. And even though the genesis of this was, quite different than the European Commission's work on safe and sustainable by design, you'll actually see a lot of parallels when I describe what we've been working on. So as Miriam said, I'm from the OECD, supporting the work of the Chemical Safety and Biosafety Program, and we work with member countries, but also partner countries and other stakeholders within the chemicals program. And one of the main objectives is of course, to protect human health and the environment, but also at the same time to harmonize more approaches between countries on chemical control policies in order to be able to save resources for government and industry. And this in the long run also helps to prevent unnecessary distortions of trade. And all our work is available on our chemical safety website. So to also complement this, when we're working with member countries, it's really, in this program, it's the chemical regulators of those countries that are there. So it's really, the program of work is really driven by chemical regulators. And I just want to mention that this work on plastics is done under our umbrella of risk management activities, which were brought together just in 2021 under a new working party organization. Because the work on plastics is actually coming out of a long history of work on sustainable chemistry, and also harnesses work we've done on substitution. So it's really building upon different areas of work that that we were doing. So why did we decide to work on this particular topic? Well, as many of you know, the interest in better managing plastics has been growing and growing and growing. And it was back in about 2017 where we were thinking, well, what can we bring from a chemicals perspective to the plastics discussion? And so it was really this idea that where we can make an impact with plastics from a chemicals angle is to really focus at the design stage, because chemical selection influences the health and environmental impacts all along the life cycle by the choices that we make at the design stage. So actually, I'll just go back. This early thinking led us to have some workshops on the topic and really sort of flesh out this idea a bit more. And one of the things that countries wanted to work together at the OECD on was further developing the considerations for sustainable design from a chemicals perspective. And so that's what we worked on over the last few years. And we worked with not only country delegates, but industry representatives, non-governmental organizations, those with interest, with experience in product development and design. And where we started from was a little bit the reverse of what you heard from the commission, but we actually conducted some case studies first on plastic packaging, two types, biscuit wrappers, detergent bottles, and construction material, insulation and flooring, to get a better idea of how the design process works for plastics in those areas, and what types of chemicals are used, where are the different trade-offs happening, and then from those, draw more general learnings. So all those case studies are available on our website. We haven't promoted them as much, I don't think, as our sort of more general piece that then came out. But they're really interesting and quite detailed, so I encourage you to take a look at them because they're quite concrete and really show the complexity of the issue. So just in last December, all this work accumulated with the publication of the document, A Chemicals Perspective on Designing with Sustainable Plastics. And really here, what we were aiming to do was embed sustainable chemistry thinking in the design process. So the document is really set up to focus on designers and engineers who are doing this design, and provide them with considerations to think about from a chemicals angle. So the document goes through also how you can implement this within a typical design process, and then outlines the various considerations. So as a complementary to what you heard from the Commission's presentation, we have aspects in the document that are really looking at design principles and design goals. And here we harness those from the American Chemical Society Design Principles of Sustainable Chemistry and Engineering. So maximizing resource efficiency, minimizing hazards and pollution, thinking holistically using life cycle thinking. And then we articulate a series of sustainable design goals. But depending on the ambition of a company or an organization, these can be complemented, these can be prioritized, because there will be trade-offs. And so you need to think about at your design stage as well, what are your priorities among your design goals? And then the document walks through each life cycle phase to identify key elements for designers to take into account with regards to chemicals. And then obviously you have to have a whole product optimization. And so there we also try to bring together all of these considerations. So it's really using, it's not a life cycle assessment approach, but it's really more a life cycle thinking approach, and the considerations that regulators and governments also within the context of OECD wanted to communicate. So some reflections. So the complexity is very high. When you start drilling down to the chemicals level and you're at a product stage, it is very high, but actually, if we want there to be circularity, if we want to have more sustainable products, we can't ignore this complexity. We have to come to terms with how to deal with it. And we also really need a systems level approach because you're looking across the whole life cycle. Of course, then this means you need to involve many stakeholders when you're thinking about your design, and you have significant information needs. So these are all challenges when it comes to implementing this type of an approach. And it will lead to different policy choices, but not only policy choices, but design choices as well. I mean, you may have a fantastic new material that will protect your food more, and you want to use that, but then it can't be recycled. Or you might have a substance that you'd like to use in your material that has a slightly better hazard profile, but if you use that, then in your production stage, maybe you're using a lot more water. So how do you think of these different trade-offs through at an earlier phase in the design stage? So this was kind of really a wish list kind of document. And so we decided also to have a workshop drilling in just to look at flexible food grade packaging and looking at this one sector. What are some of the barriers to this type of design process, and what can policymakers do to help? And we're just pulling together all the learnings from this workshop that we had in May, and we'll be publishing those as well. But I can say that many of the barriers are not specific to this particular sector. I mean, there was issues such as chemical transparency, being able to use secondary materials and ensuring their safety. And then there's also many barriers that are beyond the chemicals dimension. Now, just to switch gears for one moment here at the end of my presentation, I would be remiss in this session not to mention that also within our working party on nanomaterials, there's been an initiative to work on safer innovation approaches for nanomaterials and nano-enabled products. So this safer innovation approach was also published in 2020 and works through concepts like safer by design, regulatory preparedness, and safer innovation approaches, and creating a trusted environment between industry and regulators within this document focused on nanomaterials. So I encourage you to also take a look at that for another angle on safer innovation approaches. And now this group is also working to incorporate more aspects of sustainability and safe by design. I'll skip that side. And as a final thought, I think as we're embarking on this road on safe and sustainable by design, I think we can leverage a lot of the tools and approaches and methodologies that have been created maybe for regulatory purposes, such as a few years back, we published a document on selecting safer chemical alternatives. And the mindset in this was, more as a response to substitutional alternatives assessment in the regulatory context. But these same approaches can be used at the design stage as well to select safer chemicals. So just as a final message, I think this safe and sustainable by design really allows us to have proactive consideration at the design stage of chemicals management. And so this enables then their management to be better managed through the entire life cycle. So it's a complementary measure to regulatory elements, which often are reactive measure. And I think through this sustainable and safe and sustainable by design thinking, we can really put chemicals at the heart of the sustainable sustainable goals, both in terms of chemicals management, but in also having chemicals be a solution in many of these cases. So thank you very much for your time today, and I look forward to the rest of the discussions.
Thank you, Eva. Now let's go back to what's happening at European level, and I will welcome Mr. Pascal Sanders. Pascal Sanders is from ANSES, the French Agency for Health and Environmental Safety. And he is as well the coordinator for a very new project that has been launched early May, during the French European presidency as well, in an event recently in Paris. And he will explain to us how this project will benefit to the future safe and sustainable by design approach.
So, good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here at Grenoble and to present the partnership about assessment of risk from chemicals, PARC. And I will also give you a short overview of what we expect to do about the safe and sustainable by design concept and what will be the activities of PARC on this concept. So, PARC is a co-funded European partnership for the assessment of risk from chemicals. The reason behind the creation of this big initiative under Horizon Europe is the fact that in Europe we have a very nice system for the regulatory assessment of chemicals, but it is organized by domains and by type of usage, and it's now necessary to think about the future of the chemical risk assessment to protect human health and the environment according to the new challenges that we have with the chemical strategy. So we have built this partnership during the last 2 years. We have 199 partners. The funding will be 400 million euros by the European Union and the member states. We have also associated countries and non-associated third countries. And we are very proud to have also European agencies, the European Environment Agencies, the European Food Safety Authority, the European Chemical Agency as partners of PARC. And it will be very important because if we want to think about the future of the risk assessment, we have to collaborate between the national and the European agencies, and to take the challenge together. So the partnership is special because we have organized it according to our general objectives in work packages, like very big research and innovation actions. So we have 3 important things to do. To develop the high-level network for regulatory science interface, it's important to know that the steering group, the steering board of PARC is the ministries of the different member states and the general directorates at the European Commissions to steer our activities according what is expected with the European strategy. We will also develop the synergies, the collaboration and awareness, because PARC will not do everything, but we need to have the input and the collaboration with the other partnerships at the European level, and to develop the collaboration at the international level. As explained, we in the regulatory of risk for the risk assessment of chemicals, we have to work at an international level, especially with OECD, with the World Health Organization and other international organizations. We have also to implement a research and innovation program. It is organized with the 3 pillars of any risk assessment for chemicals: to know the exposure, and this needs to collaborate about the monitoring on exposure. So we will work on the human biomonitoring. We have taken the handover of the European Joint Program, which is named HBM4EU, which has delivered a lot of very good results about our exposure to chemicals. We will work also with the development of innovative methods for the hazard assessment, because if we want to do the safe and sustainable by design approach, we have also to rethink the way to assess the hazard with new technologies. And we have also to think about what will be the new regulatory risk assessment based on this computational, in vitro, in silico, etc. Activities. And it's also important for us to work with some concepts, which are the integrative risk assessment, which are the early warning about the risk associated to chemicals, or when we see a signal in the environment or in the humans. But we have also to work on the safe and sustainable by design to provide some toolbox, but to operationalize this principle. And we know that every change needs to change the people, to change the laboratories, to change our capacities, and it's an important work packages in PARC also to build the future. And as many activities now, we think that we have to share our data, we have to share our model, and all these things need to be fair. And you know that it is also a challenge to digitalize all of our activities and to share as open science, with open science, all of our results. So here you have the different partners. You can see that we have different, in the management board, we have people coming from different institutions, European agencies, national agencies in charge of environment, national public health agencies, agencies in charge of risk assessment like BFR and ANSES or RIVM or CHEMI, etc. So we have also a university, because all the new methodologies are developed by academics, and we have to work together with academics to take their new approach and methodologies, and to help through our case studies the development and the implementation and this new approach and methodologies according what is relevant and reliable for the regulatory bodies. So for the safe and sustainable by design, it was very well explained before, so I will not continue, but it's important to know that it's not so easy to define what is safe and what is safer. So it will be an important thing to understand how to substitute and minimize the production and use of substance of concern. It was an important thing to do, but we have also to know what is the behavior of these chemicals in the environment and how they reach the different animal species, and how we are exposed as humans through the food, through the water, through the air, and during our activities to these chemicals, and to think that we have to find and to use chemicals which are with less persistent and biochemical properties, because at this moment it is the most important problem that we have with legacy chemicals. So PARC will help in the, I will say, the functionalization of this concept of safe and sustainable by design, because we will give the opportunity to work with PARC with a large range of specialists in different domains to translate this criteria into methodology towards the operationalization. We know that what kind of new approach and methodologies can be developed, but it's important to discuss and to see how we can solve some problems, and how the new tests can be implemented and validated according to the needs of the regulatory bodies. So in PARC, we will work on the human environmental monitoring. We will work also close together with people working in the food safety domain. We will develop the integrative exposure assessment, the toxicokinetics approach, all the use of this data through the big data approaches. One of the new concepts in the assessment of risk is the use of the adverse outcome pathways. If we are able to identify that the new chemicals have an effect in this kind of approach, in adverse outcome pathway, we can say that we have a risk for human health or for the environment. So probably that this safe by design is a form of implementation of the precautionary principle, but based on science, because we will be able to have the early warning about the problems that can cause new chemicals, and then to select the best chemicals with a safer risk. And this approach is crucial to the fulfillment of the zero pollution ambition. So for the sustainability aspect assessment, PARC is not, I will say, the specialist in this domain. It's more complicated to see what kind of challenges and opportunities we have with this concept to boost the efficient use of resources by moving to a clean circular economy, or to stop the climate change, etc. The important things for us is to work on the tools and the methodological choices to see what kind of methods, what kind of models, tools, and indicators are developed, and how to manage the uncertainty. Because you know, for the risk assessment, what we want is to reduce the uncertainty and to have the best evaluation assessment of what kind of risk we have with a usage or the presence of chemicals. So we will develop this responsible research and innovation agenda for the regulatory risk assessment to assess. And it's important to understand that we have in close relationship with the policymakers. So it's important because to establish this high-level science to policy interface, because at the end, the regulators and the risk assessors will discuss about the interest or the risk associated to any innovation. I will say that it is a change in the spirit of the risk assessment, because we will be at the beginning, the safe and sustainable by design approach. You will be at the beginning thinking about the risk associated to your product, and not 30 years before to try to manage the risk associated to the presence of your chemicals in the body or in the environment. So it's a very different approach. So in the we will translate all of these criteria into tools, and we will create toolbox to provide the different end user, the users, the industry, and regulators and risk assessors with these tools for the safety and sustainability assessment. We have a lot of things to do because we have a lot of things to think about the different pathway of exposure to chemicals. So a lot of experts in these domains are in PARC as partners in PARC. So I expect from them a lot of activities. I am not a specialist of the domain, so I know that it is very challenging approach. We will also discuss and see how to explore the weighting between safety and sustainability criteria. As I explained, it's important to take into account these different trade-off. And since the beginning, we would like to, and we have established a stakeholder forum to be engaged and to give the opportunity to test the applicability of the SSBD toolbox. And we are very interested to develop use cases in various sectors to test the SSBD. Important things to know: PARC will have a contract with GRC to collaborate with GRC on these domains. So we enlarge the team of the GRC on these activities, I would say. And I expect that PARC will contribute on the development of this very new concept, important concept, which will drive the innovation in Europe for the next 10 years. Thanks for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pascal. A lot of work to be done, but that's really exciting to see the beginning of these initiatives, and we will follow their development. Let's now turn to Barbara Tisler. Barbara Tisler comes from Slovenia. She is... Barbara is the head of the project office at the National Institute of Chemistry. And I asked her to tell us what is SUSCHEM and what she is doing for SUSCHEM, but as well to bring this perspective on small countries in Europe. This is no judgment, but that's the fact. Small countries in Europe, younger member of the European Commission can benefit from such collaboration at this scale to enhance innovation and research in their countries. Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm really happy to present here. I will be talking from the perspective of a relatively small institute in a small country, how important it is to be an active member in the European arena, to reinforce its own capacities and reinforce the capacities of the partnerships where we are partners. We are located in Ljubljana, in the capital city of Slovenia, and we have 370 employees. We are very proud that our gender balance is really good. We have 54% of females at the Research Institute, and we have 117 PhD students which will finish their PhD working at our institute. Besides that, we have also researchers coming from other countries, from 29 countries. So we are an open institute to the new knowledge, to new experience, to new expertise. We started to open up our activities to be involved in European projects in 2016, when we founded the project office, which systematically tried to increase the number of European projects. In FP7, we were just in some of them, and in Horizon 20, we had 49 projects. 28 are ongoing, and we are very proud that we already got 17 Horizon Europe projects. The reason out of 167 projects, this is a big number for the European projects, and the reason why we are an active partner is that we cover all aspects of chemistry, from life science to material science to analytical science, and that we are members of two Brussels-based organizations, SASCHEM and EARTO, this is another, and the Slovenian Business and Research Association. Our projects, they are here aligned according to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and then mainly focus on climate actions, industry innovation, and clean energy, and health. I would like to say a little more about the role of National Institute of Chemistry in PARC. We are one of the partners in PARC. We are very proud to be involved in such a big initiative. And to be very specific, our role is computer modeling. So it will be in silico development of tools for hazard assessment of certain chemicals. Our theory department has extreme expertise in this area, and we really believe that with being partner in such a big initiative as PARC is, will increase our role as a national leader in the field and increase our international experience and develop the toolbox. The second project where we are engaged is a really important one for Safe and Sustainable by Design. Dr. Emma Stromberg here is the coordinator of IRIS, and she will present a little later. And IRIS is a really important project because it combines different stakeholders from different value chains in order to develop the methodology for Safe and Sustainable by Design. So the role of our institute, we are again partner in PARC, in IRIS, is to contribute to development of tools and test beds, but also to reinforce the connections with the industry. And we expect that some new ideas for research strands will emerge from IRIS, and that we will be able to outreach with these ideas to the Balkan states where we are very connected. So that in PARC, many of SUSCHEM national technological platforms, in IRIS many SUSCHEM technological platforms are involved, but as SUSCHEM technological platforms are also in other countries, we will be able to outreach widely. Why is this so important? Why are these two projects so important for our institute and for Slovenia? We have a very vivid chemical industry in Slovenia. We are 2 million inhabitants in Slovenia in total, so a very little country. But a lot of employees are employed by the chemical industry, which exports over 80% of its products. So it's a very lively industry, and we are well connected with them. Why are they following our research strands, our inclusion in the European projects, in the European perspectives? Because they are interested in new technologies. And on this slide, you can see the questionnaire which was analyzed by our Chamber of Commerce of Slovenia, and it was presented on the SUSCHEM Slovenia National Info Day. And it shows that Slovenia chemical industry is very interested in research and innovation investment proposals, and that they link their wish to be employed in new technology as high as buying new machines which are essential for their work. So being part of the European projects, being part of IRIS, being part of PARC, gives the Slovenian industry also the opportunity to be aligned with all these initiatives, and our institute, as the National Technological Platform of SUSCHEM Slovenia, is really combining research, academia, industry to fulfill the desired goals. So that's all from my side. I hope I will have some questions later on. And we are always willing to cooperate and answer to the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Daniel. Daniel is the Executive Director of Innovation at CEFIC. Lot of initiatives, new ways of assessing chemicals, safe and sustainable by design is a key objective. How the chemical industry will contribute to those objectives, and how the chemical industry is seeing this development of new methodologies.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for the kind introduction. I'm happy to be here today. Happy that the room is almost full, that there's a lot of interest in this topic. Of course, the topic is close to my heart, and it's also very important for the chemical industry. Yeah, you mentioned SSBD is part of CSS, and CSS is also a lot of regulations, and the impact might hurt if it comes as it is currently written. But certainly SSBD and the SRIP is very positive, is very creative, and as a guiding principle to trigger innovation, there's a full support from innovation from the chemical industry. So that's as a beginning. Then, well, let's skip this. You already mentioned it. That I would like to focus on the by design part. Yeah, that is safe and sustainability and by design. That's the three parts. And safety. And I will talk about by design as I'm coming from innovation, but I also want to say a few words in general about safety and sustainability from an industry perspective. So safety is a long-standing commitment of the chemical industry. That is, when you go to a chemical company, then safety first, that is undisputed, and that there will be no dilemmas, or safety is always first. Yeah? That's the attitude, that's the mindset of the industry. You cannot walk into a site without handing the handles at the stairs. Yeah, it's really safety is important. And I also believe that safety is regulated already in several laws, regulations like REACH and CLP. So we have already laws and frameworks in place that handle that. Yeah, it's not only the mindset, but it's also law and regulation. And of course, if we know more in science, if we advance in our knowledge about hazards, exposure, and so on, then these things need to be adapted so that it's until the latest knowledge. You know? So I think that safety is well taken care of. Sustainability is, also for, let's see, every company I know is kind of the North Star to guide their activities. It's supported by stakeholders like customers, investors, but also employees want to work for companies who have sustainability on their mind. And I believe companies who don't have this mindset, they will not be long around anymore. That's more my personal belief, but what I see in the chemical industry, the companies we work with, they have sustainability on their mind. And it's not only just let's say a social commitment, but it's also a huge business opportunity, which goes hand in hand to have sustainability and business success. That's not a contradiction. That can go hand in hand. So that's companies are motivated to do the right thing, and it's also profitable for the companies. Then we have also frameworks, and here the World Business Council of Sustainable Development has developed a portfolio sustainability assessment methodology, and there are other methods also how to do that. That can be applied to an existing product portfolio, but also to the innovation portfolio or investments, or if you buy companies, and also, of course, you want to make sure that what you buy is also with respect to sustainability in the right area. So I think that's good. That's all in place. What we really need to do, and I understand this also from the Commission, from you, is trigger innovation, have a guiding principle for innovation. That's why I want to focus here in my presentation on the by design part. Yeah? And this can really be a mobilizing power, drive innovation, and the chemical industry is happy to support this, to cooperate, to develop this framework further, to reach the goals of the chemical strategy for sustainability. Yeah? So that as an introduction. Now allow me to go a little bit into detail, and I would like to start what we learned from history, from the past. Let's say about 50 years ago, innovation, R&D in the chemical industry was the science people had a new product, a new molecule, went to the marketing people and they say, here, it's a new idea, great product, please sell it. Yeah? And that's then at some point in time, the companies realized that, well, this is not working, that is not addressing the customer interest. And then there was this pendulum from focus on technology moved very strongly, and from my perspective too much, to market pull. Innovation departments were led by marketing people. We got incremental innovation, adaptation from products to customer needs, but we didn't get new breakthrough innovation. Yeah? We just get adaptation. We didn't have much growth. We saw new startups coming up who had new technologies, breakthrough technologies coming through startups. Of course, not all of them succeeded if they don't fulfill the market pull. But then also companies started, established big companies to have innovation areas that are focused on breakthrough technologies. So I believe this is both now. After some time we have learned we need to have a technology push and market pull together to be successful in innovation. That I believe we have learned from the past. And now, let's say over the last 10 years, or now with SSBD coming into place, we will focus not only on technology push and market pull, but also on sustainability. And as I said, that's not new to the companies in the industry. That's 10, 15 years. And of course, some are leading, some are behind. But I mean, this is a topic already ongoing, and safety was always a topic. Yeah? But now bringing this into innovation, I see the danger, and allow me to feel that the discussion is on this part, yeah? And not taking very seldom here talks about technology or about market pull. And I believe we have to do this all together, yeah, and not only focusing on safety. And when I'm reading the SRIP, and it's the name, Strategic Research and Innovation Plan, yes, it's to achieve the CSS goals, right? And looking for new methodologies, to look in exposure or hazard assessment, right? All necessary, all supported, but it's only part of the game, right? Don't forget market pull and technology push, because if you have a nice here plastic or water bottle, you all still need to sell it. You can say, oh, it's safe and sustainable, but it costs 10 euros. Yeah, nobody will buy it. So you need to take this also into account. And the companies where innovation is happening, but also in industries or technology organizations, need to take this all into account. That's why advocating to have it incorporated into one innovation management process. And here the colleagues from the innovation side, they will be very familiar with the stage gate process. The stage gate process is for adoption, is for incremental innovation. And that's kind of a linear process that's easily planned. And I guess that's known, right? What will change now from my perspective is that in these gate meetings in between, when you move through these stages, that you will invite toxicology people, product stewardship people who will tell you, better not go this way, better go another way. It's the same as in the past, where this was only the scientists in this process. We involved the production people, we involved the marketing people who committed then in the beginning, well, if you develop a product with this kind of criteria, I will sell it. And here we need now to incorporate the toxicology aspect, product stewardship aspect already in the beginning, not to end up then at the end that we realize, and this happens, I'm speaking from experience. We saw phthalate-free plasticizers today, where my colleagues worked on it 10, 15 years ago to develop new plasticizers. And the application all looked good, but at the end there's a toxicology study which showed no, it's toxic, we cannot sell this. So we need to revise this process to incorporate this already in the beginning. Then, well, the challenges we face, and we talked about startup collaboration. Here below is a process, a DIA process, which is used for breakthrough innovation at big companies. Could also replace this with a lean startup process for startups. And you see the circles, yeah? So you have an idea, a discovery, and say, okay, this is a hypothesis for a new business, for a new process. You incubate it, but then you might realize that you need to go back, say, adapt something. Learning cycles also that you mentioned. It's not like you plan it, you go in cycles, adapt, and I'm very happy to have heard this. So, but that's also keeping that in mind is that don't make it too complex, because if you have like 100 criteria in the beginning that you have to adapt, and then you have to go through this 100 criteria again and again, people will not do it. I mean, that's especially small companies. They will then again, bet as in the past, go through the process and then check off the list of the 100 criteria. And I believe that's not what we want. Yeah? We want to have a new design of innovation. That's why I want to talk about innovation. And not when I saw from JRC report, start with a chemical A and then go through those 5 steps. And at the beginning is maybe economic profit or not. As I said, we have to take it all into account already in the first place. And if it's chemical A, B, or C, that might change throughout the innovation process. Yeah? So have to find a practical solution that this can be incorporated into the innovation process. And it's in a company, you have one innovation process. It's not like that, oh, there's people looking at safety in the innovation part, right? And of course, we have product stewardship people, EHSQ people. But if you are doing research for a business unit or to develop a product, you need to take everything into account all at the same time. And you have to manage this in a practical way. And I think the help is when the Commission is working with a lot of smart people together, yeah, then let's also look into that, how we can, how to integrate this into one process. Okay, a few general statements. So SSBD as part of the CSS, highly welcomed. I already mentioned this. This can become the world formula for innovation. That, as I said, highly supported. What would be good is that if regulation would prioritize, would say, okay, these are the most problematic substances, and then we can use SSBD to substitute this. But let's not mix it that SSBD is prioritizing. Let's look at REACH or whatever regulation and say, okay, this is the substance of most concern. There we need urgently a substitute. Let's apply the SSBD concept in the innovation part to find substitutes. And if we do this, this will also increase confidence for innovation and investments in the EU, that we have this guiding principle, and then companies know if we follow this principle, then we can bring these chemicals or materials, products and so on into the market and we can compete. Yeah? It's not like that we develop something and then at the end of the day, 2 years later say, oh, sorry, this is not allowed anymore. Right? Then this might be a problem. Yeah, I mean, we talked also this morning, Green Deal targets, everyone needs to contribute from personal decisions, how to travel, what to eat, and so on. But certainly this framework needs to be rolled out at scale. It's not only that a few people have to do it, basically everyone has to do it. And therefore, our recommendation is this, keep it simple, keep it operatable, so don't make it too complex. And if you're a park working on this, as I read, right, happy to exchange with you and share experience, and same also Commission, happy to get engaged with the practitioners who are working in innovation, right? That is, because sometimes also, honestly, some people who work in product stewardship, they like to have more criteria in this. So if you want to trigger innovation, enable innovation, talk to the innovation people who at the end have to do it. Yeah. Then another thing is predictive tools, toxicology data sharing are needed. I said in the beginning, right, in this process would be helpful to have a database, and there's a lot of data available to my understanding, but maybe we have to combine it and talk about how the rights, I mean, looking at IP and general data protection and all these things, how to do that, but to combine it so that everyone has access to this data, of course, in line with competition rules and so on, but to make sure that we don't waste time going down a pathway which will lead to a dead end. You know? So therefore, we need to have this predictive tool in the beginning. Yeah, and transparency. Some of the let's say, criteria in the area of sustainability sometimes are relative compared to the market. Yeah, we are better to the market. That's a little bit fuzzy, right? And it's also, the less you know about the market, the better you think you are, right? And therefore, I think it's good if there's transparency on the fulfillment of this criteria for benchmarking, but also then, of course, supporting the innovators who follow this SSBD process. Okay, last slide, key takeaways. From my side, I would be happy, or we as from innovation from the chemical industry would be happy to take this as a guiding principle for innovation. Yeah, focus on innovation, not so much as a labeling scheme for existing products. Yeah, to trigger and guide the development of new products and processes. And in order to do that, really to make it practical, develop and roll out one innovation management process, including criteria. I mean, it's a guiding principle. When do you need guidance? You need guidance when you have a dilemma, right? So I have certain resources for my R&D, and where do I put it? On which project? A project which is highly sustainable, or with a more safer chemical, or with a chemical that fulfills more criteria from the customer. There you need guidance when you have to make trade-offs, right? That is, of course, everybody says, yeah, we need safer, we need more sustainable, cheaper, more performance, everything. But then I don't need a guideline. That's clear, right? That's, everybody would like to have this. The guidance we need when there are variants, when there's dilemmas. Yeah, and lastly, as I already said, happy to engage. We're happy. We are engaging in the IRIS project already, but also we provided already some case studies to JRC. But also happy with the piloting of the concept in innovation project, applying this. And of course, always happy to answer questions, or if you want to discuss this topic, feel free to reach out to me. Yeah?
Thank you, Daniel. So we will be a little bit late on the schedule, but I think it's so important, so interesting that we will take a little bit more time. Now, Emma, IRIS project. Before we start the panel discussion, and Daniel has already asked several questions, Emma, please come and tell us a few words about IRIS project. Emma, I didn't mention. Emma is from Sweden. She's working at IVL. She is a specialist in polymer science. And she is the coordinator of the new IRIS project.
Thank you, Miriam. and thank you for your kind invitation to present this newly launched project. I will come closer. Newly launched project, IRIS. It has been mentioned already several times. I'm so happy to hear. And I will tell you rather quickly on what the project is about. One of the objectives of IRIS is to develop a community. And I was so happy to hear Lars presenting this morning the all-inclusiveness. This is exactly what we're striving for. We want to have an all-inclusive network of experts, industry, different stakeholders, but also we want to engage citizens. I was also happy to hear that that is the stakeholder group that is missing at the moment. And we will want to have this as a long-term cooperation. So this is just the start. We want to have this as a permanent network for a longer period of time. IRIS is focusing on materials, products, and processes. So in that sense, collaboration with PARC will be essential because you are focusing on chemicals, and we will continue to focus on materials, products, and processes. And there is, as Alexander mentioned, so many different initiatives already that have started or already finished that we need to bring in the knowledge from all of these initiatives within this network as well. And another objective here is to strongly support the implementation within industry so that SSBD is applicable and it's easier to implement for safe and sustainable materials. So how are we going to do it? First of all, we are aiming at mapping of different methods and tools that are already available. Here we have a very strong collaboration with industry. So we're involving industry already from the beginning to compile all the knowledge and what kind of initiatives there are on the safe by design, sustainable by design, and safe and sustainable by design. What is lacking? Where do we see the difficulties? What is the complexity? Eva mentioned the complexity in plastics. It's in other materials as well. And what kind of gaps do we see? What kind of skills and knowledge is needed to proceed? Thereafter, we will create roadmaps that will be updated throughout the whole project to ensure that the governance, industry, and R&D are aligned. And as I said, we will develop this framework for the expanded SSBD community. Here we are looking forward to collaborate with finished, ongoing, and future projects that will be started on SSBD, and of course, to ensure that there is a knowledge transfer, especially between the different value chains. We have 6 different value chains already involved in IRIS, and we're looking forward to expand to several other value chains. And we will see how the knowledge can be transferred within the value chains, between the value chains, because a lot of challenges are faced by many. And also to make sure that the knowledge that is already there is available for SMEs. We will have a special focus on the SMEs. So who are we? We are 20 partners from 15 different countries. And the partners come from policy, applied science, research and education, industry, and innovation. So we're trying to cover as much as possible within the field. There is a lot of extensive knowledge already here, and several of the partners have been working, some on the safe side, some on sustainability side for a very long time. And this is just the beginning. So this is who we are, and now we're inviting all of you to join us. Please follow us on LinkedIn. Our webpage is under construction. Thank you.
Our speakers to come for the panel discussion. We will see if we have some questions on Slido. And I have one first question to Alexandra. Alexandra. Yes, the microphones. Here are they are. Second microphone. So we are. It was explained at the beginning, and I would like you to confirm us and to reassure us about that. So, what kind of tool is SSBD? If it is not a regulatory, not mandatory, and which is different compared to what we are used to from the European Commission, which is to create regulations.
Well, not only, but yeah, I can clarify that. So what I was trying to make clear in my presentation, but I can reinforce that what we are really trying to do is to create and with the Safe and Sustainable by Design first, the framework, a guidance for researchers, for industry, for RTOs, how to assess safety and sustainability of chemicals and material. So to really have a harmonized approach available. And I hope this is clear. Indeed, this is no regulatory activity. And as mentioned, we don't want to duplicate existing initiatives. So if there is already a requirement for providing data for the safety assessment, we also want this to be used now to generate new needs, but to be able to use already existing data for the assessment. Of course, some will be missing because the requirement for the safety is there and it's high, but safe and sustainable is a very high bar. And of course, we are very well aware that not all chemicals and many chemicals will not reach this bar, and it's not to prevent or restrict the use of the chemicals.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Alexandra. I was thinking about you, Emma, because we have here a question about how PARC is considering necessary involvement of the industry, but we are touching on the collaboration maybe between the PARC, the IRIS project that will be developed alongside. So maybe Emma first and Pascal later.
Would that be all right with you, Pascal? Yes, as I mentioned, it's essential for us to collaborate with PARC. And we are quite lucky. 4 of partners in IRIS are partners in PARC as well. So we are collaborating already from the beginning. As Pascal mentioned, there are several tools that will be developed. And for example, early warning for chemical risks that we have a possibility to bring in and see how industry can apply this. So to assure or to evaluate applicability of these tools that will be provided by PARC. However, we will only be able to assess the early findings since we're only a 3-year project. So in the beginning, we will collaborate really, really closely, I hope.
Yes, PARC is a public-public partnership, but we have a stakeholder forum, we have synergies activities also to develop, so we are also open to discuss how to collaborate with industry. We are in contact with CEFIC or different private organizations which represent the industry. The idea also is, in PARC, I don't mention this, is the fact that we have also national hubs which will be established with PARC in the different member states. And these national hubs work at the national level and also have to develop the collaboration and synergies with regional programs or all activities at the national level in line with the PARC activities. So it will be important to work together. But at the beginning, it's also important to have this landscape organized by PARC between academia, research institutions, organization in charge of risk assessment, and the communication with the Commission and the ministries. So we are an instrument of research and innovation. It's open for the discussion and to deal with everybody the challenges of the SSBD, the chemical strategy, etc.
Thank you. Alexandra, hard work will be to coordinate for the European Commission. So what will be the recipe for that?
Well, I think that our participation here and the fact that we don't see each other for the first time, it's a good case. We talked before and met with over the past many times, but that's not enough, of course. And there will be a lot of effort from our side to really coordinate all the activities. Of course, the Commission is involved directly in the park, so there will be a steering part from our side to make sure that the initiatives are aligned. We are very closely looking and participating in that. We participated in the kickoff meeting of IRIS and also are in contact with the coordinator and the group. And we are also involved and engaged with the stakeholders through the workshops for the consultation of safe and sustainable by design, and also very, very happy that CEFIC supported the case studies, trying to engage companies that are interested to test it. So this is already ongoing. With OECD, we met last time in the high-level roundtable. Where we were also discussing with stakeholders the SSBD and STRIP. Only with Barbara we meet, but the doors are open. But indeed, this will be a constant effort, and I can only reassure that from the Commission side, this is a very important development. And if we really want to, achieve what is very ambitious from the policy perspective. We will make sure to be in touch, to exchange, and try to steer as much as possible, but also to listen. This is what I mentioned before. We will provide, we want to establish a feedback loop once the recommendation of the commissions are out. We want to listen back. So now it's on paper, it will be tested, and then to collect the feedback directly from people who are using it and to revise it.
Any opportunity for activities at OECD and European Commission to converge? We have a question in Slido on it. Is there any overlap between what OECD and European Commission is doing? We saw it with the project Eva told us about. So can they work together? What are the differences between the approaches?
Maybe I can start. So I think many of these initiatives had different genesis, like the work on nanomaterials, the work on plastics, and then more recently the Commission driving the work on safe and sustainable by design criteria. And I think it's just reflective of things going around in the community where this was a need that was seen. And so, it started from different little bubbles, I think, in different places. And I mean, the good thing is that there's a lot of convergence in the thinking that's been put down here. But certainly from the OECD perspective, we'll look, the Commission is involved in our work along with a number of the member states, but then of course countries beyond Europe as well. But we will look very closely at what's being done in Europe. I mean, it's not our intention to duplicate things moving forward. And so are there things that are coming out of Europe that we can harness and bring to a larger OECD community? There's no desire to duplicate things moving forward. So I think it's really coordinating, hearing what's going on in different areas, and then seeing what value added the OECD can bring on this topic as we move forward.
Just one question. How the members of OECD are seeing the European Union in terms of leadership regarding chemicals management? Is it something that is...
well, I mean, certainly the REACH system and the chemicals management framework in the EU is one of the strongest frameworks across the globe. At the same time, we work with countries that have quite different chemical management frameworks. And it's so within the context of those chemicals management frameworks, how can we still harmonize approaches and thinking and methodologies so that we can we don't want to complicate the situation of chemicals management more than it is. So how can we, have the same types of philosophies even within the context of different chemical management frameworks?
So some work to harmonize. Still Still a question to Alexandra, because when we are talking about harmonization, we are afraid of the fragmentation of the European market. So how will you make countries work with the guidelines, with the new methodology, because it is not regulation?
I think that if we would say that we would make countries, that would be already a very wrong message that to send. But we want them. We want to engage them, and this is why we went with the recommendation. Commission recommendations is a tool that allows us to really send a message to the member states, to really recommend them to use the framework in a unified way. I think that it would be a lot of effort from our side, and also with the park, when it's a public-public partnership, where it has to be from one side bottom up, when the researchers who are using it are really developing new tools applicable for the framework. From the other side, recommendation, the feedback loop that we're going to create, to ask also to discuss with the member state to provide us or to support implementation or reference to the toolbox in their national funding programs. But I would never use the word how we would enforce, because I think if we started to think that we need to enforce something for the member states, we are already on a lost position.
Exactly.
I think what we managed to do so far started to get the excitement and involvement in so many stakeholders. We have here sitting, OECD, scientists, industry, and it was not that easy, to get people sitting in agreeing, at least in some of the aspects. Of course, there are different perspectives. But I think that being able to agree, yes, this is an opportunity and we should go into this direction, gives us, I think, a very strong sign that the member states' engagement will also follow. But of course, there will be a need for work also from the Commission side, but also individuals.
Thank you. From the Slido, and if I may translate the question, is there still room for SMEs in those initiatives? IRIS or initiatives from CEFIC, how SMEs can feel included in those research?
All right, Iris. So within the scope, we have a possibility to transfer knowledge from larger industries to SMEs. Okay. That is one of the goals that we have within IRIS. And we will engage them directly and indirectly, let's put it that way, directly by arranging different forums and different events where we have this knowledge exchange. And bringing this, that's the idea of IRIS, bringing people together so that building this kind of network where the transfer is both of knowledge and skills are really easy, so that the SMEs don't need to start from the beginning. They can always focus further on the innovation process, further on development. Daniel, would you like to?
Yeah, I can add from CEFIC side, of course, SMEs are welcomed at CEFIC. And certainly also we work with SMEs indirectly, that a lot of our members are the national associations, like for in Germany, VCI, who have then bundled the interests of the SMEs who might not have that enough resources, that enough time to engage with CEFIC. So it's bundled via the national associations who then work with us.
Thank you. Referring to the first session this morning about the material manifesto, is there some connections between the two projects?
I think it was mentioned many times, so it would be now strange if I say that totally no connection. I think, of course, also with the materials manifesto, the idea is to ensure that the materials are safe and sustainable, but I wouldn't like to jump into making direct link and not to use safe and sustainable by design as a silver bullet and a solution for anything and everything. The focus is really on the innovation markets that were discussed. I think there are a lot of possible links, and I think that we're going to follow up the development of now the 1 year phase of getting this roadmap even more detailed. And I think we definitely gonna accompany the development of this initiative to ensure that safe and sustainable by design is represented, but wouldn't jump already to the conclusion that, you know, that those two initiatives are super closely linked.
Thank you. Another question from the Slido. Will it be possible that the environmental footprint becomes a benchmark within the SSBD framework?
Well, in general, like environmental footprint categories are considered when you're talking about the life cycle assessment. So, of course, that's a part of the SSBD, but it goes beyond the environmental footprint. It's broader sense, also safety and sustainability, but we want to build up from the existing tools and methods.
Thank you. Daniel, you already raised many questions during your presentations, and you are very quiet. Take the floor. What would you like to
I can
ask?
ask more questions.
Come on.
What do you want? Should I ask more questions or should I give more answers? Yeah?
No, you were really in your presentation keen on highlighting the difficulties it might be for the industry to cope with new methodologies, and while we shouldn't, we should keep in mind that objectives is to satisfy markets and so on. So
yes, yeah, I believe
less burden maybe, or how to make it a success. A win-win solution for the industry and for the European Commission.
Yes, of course, happy. And win-win will be if we talk to each other as we do, right, to make it a success. And then we as I said, we're happy to support this. Yeah, maybe why it's difficult. I think if you look at the hard figures, at the data, you see that the European industry over the last 20 years has lost in the global market share from about 25% to about 15%, whereas other regions like China has strongly increased. And of course, if you have more sales, then you have more profits and more money you can spend on innovation. So currently situation, we're spending about 9 billion euros every year on innovation, whereas China is spending 15 billion euros on innovation. Which is still a high figure, but you can imagine that when competing with other regions, that's a difference already. Then, of course, we all know that there's a war in Ukraine, and we don't know how this will develop. Maybe next week we don't have any more gas or oil or coal for our industry, which will have a huge impact. At least there's kind of a lot of uncertainty. And certainly not the time to say, okay, hey, we need more R&D. We hire now R&D people because there might be crash or let's say significant problems coming up end of the year, first quarter of next year. So test it. And then, of course, we have these initiatives, and I ask my public affairs colleagues to ask, let me know the initiatives that are related to innovation. And they come up with 50 initiatives that are all related to innovation. And that's quite a lot from my perspective. And some of them are, let's say, in demand. Let's say, okay, this needs to be solved by innovation, which is quite nice. But it's also, I mean, if someone comes, 50 people come to you on the same day and want to see you, it's nice that you are in high demand, but you cannot handle this, right? I mean, you need to have like 10 people to have this discussion with 50 people. So same with innovation. If you have that high demand on innovation, then you need to have more resources, meaning you have to have more funding, more support. And I see about, I don't know, forgot the figures, half of it or 2/3 of it is also demand, but also supporting through funding that. And now you kept me going.
But we will not have time.
Okay, last comment is I mean, in the chemical industry, you have digital and the Green Deal targets and digital transition. I guess that's for all industries. But the CSS is specifically for the chemical industries. And the CSS, if it comes as it's written down, will lose like 12% of our sales. And this is quite a hit, or we have to compensate for it on top of all the others, right? And therefore, asking from the chemical industry for innovation, right? Please consider this, that we need support. We have the same goal, right? But let's discuss how we can achieve this facing the current circumstances.
Would you like to answer?
I will just like I'm listening, but I'm not here in the position to make this kind of decisions. But yeah, I think that the concerns of the chemical industry are being raised, and also like the Commission is not deaf to it. So this is the only thing I can say at this moment.
Thank you very much. Many possibilities to continue the discussion at lunch. So, Elena, I have the answer to your question. How can funded projects related to SSBD topic collaborate with Spark and with IRIS? Meet Emma and Pascal. That's it.
And this is highly, highly encouraged, very encouraged.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. Sorry, we weren't too talkative. Thank you for the panelists. And I encourage you to continue the discussion during lunch. Thank you. See you this afternoon for the final plenary. Thank you.